Let's get real. Let's get loud. On America Out Loud Talk News, this is McCullough Report and Focal Point Substack. It's a great pleasure to welcome back to this show. Actually, the all-time favorite guest of McCullough Report, Dr. Michael Gaeta from the Gaeta Institute in Boulder, Colorado. Dr. Gaeta, welcome to the program again.
Peter, so good to be back, my friend. Glad to be here.
I tell you what, we get so fired up. Whenever you come on, I get so much positive feedback, and
oh, wonderful.
People have questions, and you're helping them. So I wanted to further expand this topic of cancer.
Yes.
A lot of my patients are worried about it. I'm an internist and cardiologist, and to set the stage, in the United States, about 40% of us die of heart disease. Remember the vignette you gave of your dad who died of heart disease, right?
That's right.
So 40% of us die of heart disease, 40% die of cancer, and 20% die of other causes. So the thesis is, if we do really good on cardiovascular health, and there's approaches we can take with diet and fitness and supplements and medications. There was a paper published by UCLA years ago. It's called the UCLA CHAMP study that concluded well over 90% of cardiac death is preventable. So hopefully you and I and all of our listeners are preventing cardiovascular death by all of our health habits. But what does that relatively leave open? So now there's even a larger relative, in a sense, threat of cancer. The 20% other causes are homicide, suicide, car accidents, other things. So the bottom line is, if we're really managing cardiovascular risk well, Michael, we're actually even at greater proportional risk of cancer. And I think that could be you and me. So why don't you kind of set the stage with respect to lifestyle, just in general, in cancer?
Right. Well, that's a great point, Peter. And what's cool about what you said was that if we do a good job with cardiovascular disease, we're also, at least in part, going to do a good job with cancer, because there is so much overlap in causation that has to do with the lifestyle. I was listening to the head of oncology at Stony Brook University Medical Center when I used to live in New York. I was driving to teach a class, and he was on NPR, and he told the interviewer on NPR, because he's the head of oncology, that 90 to 95% of all cancers are not genetic, but lifestyle. The interviewer was blown away, because there was this long pause, like he was getting unplugged from the Matrix at that moment, that he was like, are you trying to say, doctor, that 95% of cancers are, because he only said, because the interviewer said, well, it's all genetics, right? If it's in your family, you're going to get it. He said, well, that's 5 to 10%. And the interviewer said, pause, you mean it's 99% lifestyle? He said, yes, that's correct. So I'm so glad we have a chance to stretch out on this a little bit. When we're looking at cancer, and I appreciate, you and Nick have been publishing so much on the contribution of COVID vaccines, your friend Ryan Cole as well. So we have this huge contribution of COVID injections to cancer. I'm seeing this in my practice, and I just buried a friend, sadly, a few months ago, who passed away shortly after her third shot. And so, this is a thing, but obviously cancer has been on the rise for decades, despite, President Nixon's so-called war on cancer. So when we look at cancer, the good news is there's so much that can be done preventatively to increase cancer resistance. And that's important, because we had in 2 years ago, 2024, we had 2 million new cases and at least 612,000 deaths. And that's kind of messed up. The average age of diagnosis is still, as it has been, well, I think it's probably coming down with COVID shots, but pre-COVID shots, it was 67. So we know it's a lifestyle thing, as you're pointing out, Peter, that this is a cumulative damage lifestyle condition. So the good news is that means we can do something about it, right? So that's the main thing. So a couple of main factors here, and this is where we get to the lifestyle. And this is, my former wife's dad died of colon cancer. He lived, his family lived under high power lines in New Jersey for decades. Was that the cause? I don't know. but there are some significant lifestyle factors here. So the first one, probably the most important one as a dietitian, nutritionist, I would say it is our diet. And that's been a huge factor. And that's where that overlap is, cardiovascular cancer, if you clean up the diet. And I really appreciate your commentary on the new food pyramid, better, but could be improved. And that is, a step in the right direction, 100%. Because what we're seeing, Peter, is the effects of chemicals in the diet. We're seeing the effects of genetically modified foods and the Roundup that goes with them. We're seeing the effects of sugar, and we know that's a huge factor with glycation damage affecting the endothelial cells in cardiovascular disease. And we're just seeing this whole sort of toxic input and high sugar input. And now we're coming out of it, but for decades, we've been living under this sort of miasmic cloud of ignorance that saturated fat in the diet was somehow bad, when all along we know it was protective. And we've replaced a lot of that fat from 50 to about 35% calories from fat from turn of the century to now. And we've replaced it with sugar. And that's been a huge issue. So that's one place people can start, is with what you eat. And that's a major factor. And so simply put, folks contributing as much as they can to a local, organic, whole foods diet. As Bobby Kennedy said, eat real food, not, as minimal packaged food as possible, and really try to get some of that sugar and chemicals out of the food. The organic standards, despite the food industry's best efforts, are still pretty good. We can rely on that. But again, even if a person has a budgetary concern, I can't buy organic, okay, just switch your diet to more whole foods. Getting plenty of foods that we know, absolutely know, prevent cancer. Things like cruciferous vegetables. Absolutely, there's a direct relationship.
Now, can you name some of these cruciferous vegetables so we can really get our notes down?
Yeah, happy to. So there's about 20 vegetables in this category. These are things like kale and Brussels sprouts that are pretty popular ones. And but there's a range of them. Kohlrabi. There is let's see. We have broccoli. Let's see. Daikon, radish. Radishes are great. Bok choy, cabbage, which a lot of people enjoy. Fermented cabbage, which would be a kimchi or sauerkraut. Radishes of all kinds. Great source of sulfur to support that detoxifying sulfation pathway in the liver. And collard greens. So these are just some examples of things that are just easy to put into the diet. But we know for sure that there are foods that decrease your cancer risk, like cruciferous vegetables, like green tea. One study showed green tea drinkers had half the cancer incidence.
Really? Now, how about matcha?
Well, that's what I drink. I have a teaspoon or two. Well, I'm 2 teaspoons a day. Because I don't drink coffee except maybe once a week on average. I'm with Michael Pollan on this. We just happen to have the same pattern of daily green tea with a weekly cup of coffee. But I have an organic matcha, 2 teaspoons a day. And I like how I feel. It's a wonderful prebiotic. It's beneficial to the gut microbiome. It has a range of cytoprotective, cell protective factors. It activates the master switch of cellular defenses, which is the NRF2 or NRF2 pathway inside, which is a nuclear transcription factor, the nuclear erythroid factor 2. Things like turmeric and green tea and rosemary activate that pathway. Now, we've known that, as you said, green tea, matcha is much better than the tea bag because you're actually getting the whole leaf powder.
Right.
We know that all of those foods and spices, herbs, activate this pathway. And we've known for decades that they help prevent cancer. But now we have a little bit of a better idea of why. So turmeric, things like, and all of the full, healthy fats. So your grass-fed beef, your organic pastured eggs, your olive oil, your fish, wild fish 4 or 5 times a week. All the sulfur-rich foods are wonderful, like garlic and onion, for example. Eggs have a bit. Radishes are great. And since cholesterol is in the diet is protective, it's a protective molecule that every animal cell and every animal species produces cholesterol. That foods like organic eggs can be protective. And we know that these healthy fats help protect the genetic material of the cell from all of these toxic assaults from the environment. So those are just a few examples of just foods you can get into the diet. And then things to eliminate, added sugar. Again, sugar in foods, like I just had an apple today. I like my Honeycrisp organic apples. That's naturally occurring. That's naturally occurring sugar. Sugar in fruits is not a problem. It's, God made the plants that produce those fruits. It's a natural thing. But added sugars is where we run into trouble. I just did. This is an amazing thing for your listeners. The average American, Peter, consumes 102 pounds of sugar per year.
What?
That's about 4. I'm serious. We are now the world's leading consumer of sugar. That's, Peter, I'm glad you're sitting down. 4.5 ounces a day of sugar. And we are also home to the population that consumes the most sugar of any population set in human history, which is American teenagers. They consume over 6 ounces of sugar per day, which is insane. So this is not good. And sugar, as you know, produces, stimulates insulin release to get that sugar out of the blood and into the tissues. We can't have high blood sugar. That can cause organ damage. And insulin, we know, is very pro-cancer. So we've got to keep our insulin levels down. What I recommend to my patients is keep that fasting insulin at 5 or less. It's a very good marker for one of them for potential cancer risk.
I just wanted to point out,
please,
on that sugar line, cancer patients, especially solid tumor cancer patients,
yes,
are used to going for CT PET scans. PET scan is positron emission tomography scans.
That's right.
Serial scans. And when a PET scan lights up for cancer, the cancer cells are preferentially taking up glucose. That's what lights up a PET scan. So it's fluorodeoxyglucose that is the radio tracer that lights up. So cancer does preferentially, in a sense, feed on sugar.
100%.
But before we can kind of get further into this, I do want you to address some other vegetables and fruits, just so I can know.
Yeah, for sure.
How about the vegetables that contain carotene carotenoids, peppers, carrots?
That's a great question, Peter. The carotenoid. So we have carotenoids, and then we have flavonoids. Now, flavonoids 100 years ago in the literature were sometimes referred to as vegetable dyes. So the carotenoids are often they're often vitamin A precursors, for example. Although the best source of vitamin A is preformed vitamin A in say liver, for example, cod liver oil or grass-fed beef or pasture chicken liver. That's kind of the ultimate source of vitamin A. But those carotenoids have a range of factors, a range of benefits, even beyond that vitamin A precursor, which includes supporting the gut microbiome, which is really important. The other thing you're going to find in those peppers you mentioned, Peter, and I love peppers, I have them on my salad all the time, that colorful diet, is the flavonoids. Now, it's about 1,200 flavonoids. These were a century ago referred to as vegetable dyes. That's what gives flowers and plants their color. So if you see anything in nature that's not green, the color came from flavonoids, typically. And those flavonoids are awesome. They're cytoprotective. They support the health of the endothelium, which is very important in cardiovascular disease. They support the health of the gut microbiome. They're just a big deal. And that's, this whole colorful diet idea supports that principle that flavonoids have systemic benefits. So that's going to be one really important thing.
But do they have anti-cancer properties to the extent
Yeah.
that cruciferous vegetables do?
Cruciferous, it's hard to it's hard to be cruciferous vegetables. There's an inverse relationship between cruciferous vegetable intake and cancer risk, especially the estrogen-driven cancers, which
Really?
is 80% of breast cancers. Well, it's because the cruciferous vegetables have a range of factors that support estrogen metabolism. So when estrogen levels, particularly the most proliferative of the three estrogens is estradiol or E2, the liver's got to break that down. And we can help the liver break that down with things like cruciferous vegetables, kale, Brussels sprouts. This is how the body naturally supports hepatic or liver detoxification of estrogens. There are more synthetic type supplements like indole 3-carbinol and diindolylmethane. I don't really like those too much because they're chemical isolates. You're missing all the rest of the wonderful stuff in the food. So I'd rather use the diet and supplements that are made of food instead of chemical isolates like DIM and I3C. So, for example,
let me just get you to comment on another broad group, though, and that's fruits. Let's just take apples, pears, oranges, bananas, grapes, blueberries. How about some?
Yeah, no, that's a lot of good things there, and it's very interesting. The study came out in just a couple of years ago because we've all heard this stuff. Oh, don't eat fruit; it has sugar in it. And a big study came out on diabetes and found an inverse relationship between fruit consumption and type 2 diabetes. So it appears that fruits are protective despite the sugar content in type 2 diabetes. And I believe that's because of the fiber content. I just had my Honeycrisp apple today, very different than drinking a cup of apple juice, right? The fiber has been removed. That's a big thing. But we have polyphenols, which are a class of secondary metabolites that are in the foods. You mentioned the carotenoids, and the dietary fiber is significant. And also just the micronutrient content of vitamins, minerals, trace elements. These are very helpful. So we know that, for example, the polyphenols, which and bioflavonoids, some of the famous flavonoids are things like quercetin, and then other compounds like resveratrol found in red grapes and other foods are highly protective in cancer. And this was one theory about why there's less cancer in the Mediterranean diet. It's a colorful diet, full fat diet, and also some red wine in the mix. My ancestry is Italian. I understand that, and enjoy, my organic red wine from time to time.
Now, before you jump off there, fiber. You have your insoluble fiber when you chew the peel on an apple, or different, and then you have the soluble fiber, the pectin and the guar. Isn't there some magic with respect to fiber and its preventive effect on colon cancer?
Oh, 100%. That's a great point, Peter. Yeah. So we know for sure. So you have insoluble fiber. I describe it to patients as like the Roto-Rooter, and make sure you clean yourself out. It's not well digested, so it tends to sort of clear out, kind of like if you have to snake out a drain, it has a little bit of that effect, a little bit. And then you have the soluble fiber, which has a wonderful effect on several things. One is blood sugar. The other is circulating fats, which we call triglycerides. So lipid profiles improve, sugar profiles improve, and really important is the microbiome. Fiber feeds. This is food for the gut microbiome, which is extremely important, related to like everything. It's one of the three control systems in the body that regulate everything, along with the nervous system and the endocrine system. The microbiome, directly or indirectly, helps to regulate everything.
Wow, that's a terrific overview. Is there anything in the plant world that's pro-cancer, or that we should avoid?
Yeah, good question, Peter. Mostly what we're concerned about are, so the short answer is no. However, there are toxins naturally occurring in certain plants, like arsenic comes to mind, but there's different forms of arsenic. There are relatively more and relatively less toxic forms of arsenic. What's in foods is pretty benign. So, I kind of like, God set the world up to support us, and foods that we typically eat are very benign and very safe and very protective. So there's not a whole ton. Obviously, if you have a poisonous mushroom, that's kind of an obvious thing.
Mhm.
If you eat something that's overtly toxic, but there isn't a whole lot, again, in moderation, particularly, that is going to be harmful. Really, where we run into trouble is when people mess with food, right? Well, hydrogenating the oils, refining the grains to make white flour or
Mhm.
white rice. These sorts of adding chemicals, preservatives, herbicides, pesticides. That's where really we see the big problems.
Well, how about char broiling
Oh,
meat?
yes,
So, for
yeah,
instance, if you take
yeah,
some hot dogs and you cook them black on a charcoal grill and eat them,
right.
I mean, aren't there data suggesting that actually increases the risk of colon cancer?
Yeah, that's good data, Peter. I've seen the same research, and it's reasonably credible that char broiling may be an issue. That probably likely is an issue, and that's where we come back to, okay, how else can we cook the food, and how often do you do that? Like I like to grill, but I'm doing that 5, 6 times, 7 times a year, right? So this is not every day I'm throwing stuff on the grill. But yeah, that data, it wasn't just one study. There were several studies on the char broiling thing. So okay, so you have other cooking methods, and if you are going to char broil, it's not going to be a daily thing. My opinion is, it kind of goes into what I tell patients is aim for 90-20. If 90% of your diet is clean, 10% can be basically whatever, the social times
Mhm.
out, the birthday parties, the cruise, where your diet's a little off, Christmas, holidays, things like that, Halloween, if that's 10%, if your body has enough of the right thing, it can handle some of the wrong thing is the basic principle.
Right. And how about cooking oils? There's a lot of confusion with this term
Yes.
seed oils. I'm
Yes.
personally confused. I
Yes.
thought I kind of understood cooking oils and
Yes.
put it in context. People they get all riled up about this, and I said, listen, you don't drink this stuff. You can calculate how much oil is there. There seems to be a lot
Yeah.
of swirling of
Yes.
concern on this. So kind of set
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
record straight on oils.
Yeah, great question, Peter. So the best cooking oils are stable or solid at room temperature. And there's one exception. So things that are solid at room temperature, like when I make bacon, I save the fat and stick it in the fridge, and I've got a solid, cooking oil with bacon fat, beef tallow, butter, coconut oil. These are solid typically at room temperature, unless you're in like near the equator where it's
Mhm.
so warm it might liquefy at room temperature. It's really hot, but typically those are the best oils. Olive oil is interesting in that's it is in the category of vegetable oils. And unfortunately, we've shifted most of our food production to vegetable oils, which is not like ideal. And particularly polyunsaturated fats. Olive oil is mostly a monounsaturated fat. It's liquid at room temperature. But we have we have literally hundreds of studies on olive oil and blank, cancer, cardiovascular disease. I mean, the evidence is pretty strong that olive oil is generally a good thing.
Okay.
However, it should be one of many oils. I don't rely on it exclusively. Personally, I use tons of butter. And if your listeners forget, the word butter is almost identical to the word better. So it's easy to remember. But I basically use olive oil for my, homemade balsamic vinaigrette, my mom's recipe from Sicily.
Mhm.
Um, and that's mostly it. I don't really cook with olive oil a lot, although sometimes I do. When I'm making a burger, I'll coat the burger with olive oil before I season it, and then throw it on the pan or the grill or whatever. So in general, those animal fats in general are the most health promoting because they're the most compatible with our cells. That phospholipid bilayer of every cell is relatively more animal fat that we would describe. So vegetable oils are okay, but are more the exception. The animal fats are just more
Well,
protective and
let's
more
kind of go
nutrient
through the
dense.
vegetable oils. So we covered
Yeah.
olive. What about avocado?
Avocado oil has a pretty high smoke point. It's pretty stable. I do use it in cooking from time to time. My son really loves his roasted seaweed, and I get him the one that's roasted in avocado
Hmm.
oil. So avocado oil is pretty, it is a seed oil, right? There's a big seed in the middle of it. It's a fruit. Avocado is a fruit. And it is generally pretty good as the vegetable oils go. Those are really the only two that I recommend, well, three: coconut, olive, and avocado. And all of that is more in the kind of the smaller part of the pyramid in terms of dietary fats.
Well, and then what about corn oil?
Yeah, this is a problem. So, first of all, 94% roughly of global, US corn, 94% of it is GMO. So it's been genetically modified to withstand Roundup or other things. So unless it's certified organic, it's almost certainly GMO corn. And the corn oil, we have this is nobody's opinion. We have lots of data on this, on the inflammatory properties of corn oil. Now, is it that it's GMO? Is it that it's relatively polyunsaturated? I'm not sure. But we know the corn oil should really be avoided when possible, like the more safflower, sunflower, the ones that are just everywhere. They're ubiquitous in prepared foods. But there's a shift happening now. We have restaurants going to beef tallow, things like that. That's a good trend of getting away from so much vegetable oil, which was basically everything people were eating, into more of some vegetable oil is fine, but then mostly the animal fats.
Now, the animal fats, using them in cooking, a lot of people are familiar with butter,
Yes.
and an entire stick of butter is 58 grams of saturated fat. But
Yeah.
a pat of butter you'd put on corn on the cob, or some butter
Yes.
you kind of sprinkle over popcorn. The quantity is different, but explain a little bit about this kind of green light you're giving to saturated fat.
Yeah, well, we have the historical epidemiology on this, right? We had a time a century ago, before, and really probably a little more than a century ago at this point, when we had a lot less per capita cardiovascular disease, and half the dietary calories were from fat. And almost all of that fat, the vast majority of that fat, was animal fat. People were using bacon fat, beef tallow, which is rendered beef fat, butter, these solid at room temperature animal fats almost exclusively. It was the main fat that people ate for centuries until we learned how to refine some of the vegetable oils out. So I'm big on food quality, right? So there's a big difference between grass-fed beef and feedlot grain-fed beef, right? So a McDonald's burger beef versus a grass-fed, organic burger. So the fats will be very different as well. For example, in grass-fed beef, one of my favorite foods, it's a health food by any measure, has a wonderful content of omega-3 if it's grass-fed. It's almost entirely omega-6 when it's not, when it's grain-fed beef. And it's usually, GMO corn and other genetically modified feeds, soy, really problematic stuff. And what the animal eats becomes the animal, and you eat the animal, it becomes you. Mm-hmm. So I'm a big fan of food quality. And yeah, we have, certainly historical data, and we have good recent data on quality saturated fats being more protective. I think a lot of the negative studies we were seeing were either industry studies or they weren't paying attention to food quality. And that, I think, is an issue.
Well, I certainly more on that. As a cardiologist, I'm still in this camp where,
Sure.
I think omega-3s are the king.
Yes.
And I think fish
For
is
sure.
the king protein. But I'm looking at this. I'm still yet to be convinced there's
Sure.
a green light on animal. saturated fat. And I think part of it too is just calorie density. People are carrying around too much fat with them right now. And so anyhow, we're going to take a break here, and then we're going to move on to the second half of the program. We're going to get into medicinal and culinary herbs. So culinary are things you put on the food, and then medicinal are things you take in capsules
That's right.
or drops. We've been talking to Dr. Michael Gaeta of the Gaeta Institute. I'm going to show his website on the backside. He's in Boulder, Colorado. Michael, by the way, my son is moving to Boulder, Colorado. He's going to be near you in Longmont, him and his wife.
Sure.
So I'll be up there. We'll go out to dinner for sure.
Oh, let's do that. Please let me know, and I'd love to meet him.
We'll do it. But we're going to take a break here for our sponsors. You're listening to the McCullough Report. Let's get real. Let's get loud on America Out Loud Talk News. This is McCullough Report and Focal Points Substack. Pause right here. Let's get real. Let's get loud on America Out Loud Talk News. This is McCullough Report and Focal Points Substack. We're here with our most watched guest on the program, Dr. Michael Gaeta, the Gaeta Institute. Let me just show your website here. I also want to show my prowess in
that's impressive.
In working with the StreamYard. So this is a Gaeta Institute, how we can work together. You offer online courses, this Clinicians Mastermind Circle, and then the clinic. One of my recent patients just saw you there. They're so happy to have you. I have told people, I think you are a national resource. What's this? You've trained 20,531 practitioners?
It's an estimate, but yeah, it's definitely over 20,000. I've been teaching for 33 years and practicing for 36. And so I've just, I've taught a lot of practitioners.
Wow. And look at all of these accreditations. So if any of you wonder, who is this doctor and why is Dr. McCullough so high on Dr. Michael Gaeta, you can see why he is an innovator. He clearly is somebody who understands the human body and the mechanisms, and also also understands this breath. And look at this here. We empower people to change their health, lives, and practices with the philosophy of nature first, drugs last. And I can tell you, as an allopathic physician, I support that importantly because, we're so overwhelmed in clinical practice right now. If you can solve problems through diet, lifestyle, exercise, use of supplements, and spend less time in doctor's offices. We have a patient who we're writing up a case report on. Nick Hulsher at the McCullough Foundation is working on this. The gentleman has really been racked through the pandemic. He has chronicled 400 doctor's visits. 400 in about 5 years. I mean, it's extraordinary.
Wow. He's in a doctor's office every couple of days.
Yeah. Every couple of days. He's been
every week or two. Yeah.
So let's go on to this idea of preventing cancer. People are very interested in this. Let's go into the kitchen and discuss the culinary herbs.
Yeah, let's do that. And I just got to do one. I just want to put a period on our first segment. Fat doesn't make you fat. So dietary fats are nutrient dense. They have twice the caloric density of proteins and carbohydrates, roughly. But they provide energy for metabolism. Really, the thing that's making people fat is, unless it's hydrogenated oils and terrible fats, but it's really sugar has been much more of a problem. And we know this because the national calories from fat has dropped by 1/3 in the same time that obesity is exploded, right? So we know people are eating less fat than they did a century ago. They've replaced it with sugar, and obesity is now through the roof. 60% of all adults in the US have metabolic syndrome. 1/3 of the country has diabetes or pre-diabetes. These are insane statistics, and it's not due to eating fat. It's due to eating sugar and highly processed chemicalized foods. So again, I'm a big fan of avoiding processed hydrogenated oils, trans fats, things like that. But quality fats actually aid in weight loss. And we've seen this with the ketogenic diet, for example, which is, a therapeutic diet. So I want to emphasize the importance of healthy fats and avoiding sugar. That's really where we see the clinical outcomes that are so much superior. And I just got to finish one more thought, yes, about colon cancer, Peter. Fiber is very important. And the other thing is colon pH. The stool should be acidic between 5.5 and 6.5. And an alkaline colon strongly predisposes to colorectal cancer. So making sure the stool, and it's a simple lab test, making sure the stool is acidic, which is partly there to prevent infection, and the microbiome thrives. The healthy bacteria thrive and create an acidic environment, and pathogens thrive in an alkaline environment. And so that's one of the reasons why, we have an acidic stomach. The acid mantle of the skin has an acidic pH of 4 to 5. The vaginal canal has a pH of 4. The urinary tract and colon have a pH of 5.5 to 6.5. It's all acidic to prevent infection in part. And that's why vultures can eat terrible food and rotting carcasses, because the pH of their stomach is 0, which can dissolve coins. It's so acidic. So acid prevents infection, and then we see that in part in the microbiome. So anyway, and one other thing, you mentioned omega-3. Thank you for that. Everybody's got to check what I would call, I really recommend this to every patient, everybody, their omega-3 index, which is a measure of the percentage of red blood cell fatty acids that are EPA and DHA. The national average is 4 to 5%, which is dismal, and the optimal range is 8 to 12%. So I really recommend people get their omega-3 index checked. If you're not sure where to do that, just go to michaelgaeta.com/store. And it's a very inexpensive test that everybody should do. All right, let's get into one of my favorite subjects. Thank you for asking, which is herbal medicine. And, herbal medicine is so wonderful in that these are the blessings of nature that can help restore, but also maintain health. And with cancer, it's much better to prevent than treat. In general, it's better overall to prevent illness than to have to treat illness once it's manifest. So when we get to botanical medicine, as you pointed out, we have culinary herbs in the diet, and then we have medicinal herbs, and some of them cross over. There are culinary herbs that are also used medicinally, like garlic, for example, like turmeric, for example. These are culinary, rosemary. They're culinary herbs, but also are used medicinally and therapeutically. So a couple of things. The turmeric comes to mind as an important one. It's very interesting, Peter, looking at, and you're an epidemiologist, so you know how important that subject is. In India, the nation of India, based on which stats you're looking at, it's the most populated country in the world, pretty much close to China, 1.4 billion. And a lot of folks in India smoke cigarettes. And one thing, but they have much less per capita lung cancer than the U.S. So they've been trying to figure out, why is that? They smoke more but have less lung cancer. One is that they're smoking less chemicalized cigarettes that have less junk in them. The other is that the average dietary intake of turmeric in the Indian diet, in that subcontinent, is 2 grams a day. Wow. Now, again, that's a lot of variability with individuals and regions of the country, but they just eat a lot of turmeric. 2 grams a day in the diet on average is one estimate. And there's two studies out that suggest that might be the reason why they have a lot more smoking but less lung cancer. So turmeric is a wonderful thing and it does something that conventional treatments like chemotherapy don't do, which is to get to the core of, and you mentioned earlier, carcinomas, also known as epitheliomas, of the epithelial tissues of the body, like colon and lung and such. And these, the chemotherapy will eat away, so to speak. It may shrink the tumor, but unless you get to the stem cells, you're not, that will be very likely to come back or to regrow. So turmeric is one of the very few herbs that actually inactivates, kills cancer stem cells. And that's kind of a big thing. So turmeric in the diet and curries, if you're taking it supplementally, the best is CGM turmeric, which is turmeric blended with fenugreek. And that increases bioavailability about 25 times, far beyond the minimal bump you'll get with black pepper or piperine. There's some benefit there, but fenugreek takes you to a whole other level. So I use turmeric constantly. I take it myself, just one a day, of a formula called Turmeric Forte. That's also in our store for folks who are interested, and just preventatively.
Does it have that fenugreek in it? You have to look for that specifically?
Yeah, you'll see it on the label with fenugreek. If you see a turmeric product with fenugreek on the label with the turmeric, when it says nutrition facts or supplement facts, it'll have the turmeric listed right there. And that's how you know it's probably a CGM style turmeric, which greatly enhances bioavailability. If that's not available to you for some reason, the black pepper will give you a little bit of an improvement, because the bioavailability, which means the amount of free curcuminoids that make it into the bloodstream after oral ingestion, is very low. So they've been trying to experiment. Well, how do we make turmeric more bioavailable? And so far, they found the best thing is that fenugreek complexed turmeric.
Wow, so that's one. I have one patient who's fighting cancer right now, and he's cranked the turmeric or curcumin. He's cranked it up to 9 grams a day.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, the product I take is a turmeric concentrate. One little tablet has about 7 grams in one tablet. And with my cancer patients, I'm giving them 2 or 3 a day. So again, that's a therapeutic dose. A maintenance dose of this particular product, Turmeric Forte out of Australia, is 1 a day preventatively. And then the more aggressive dose, the therapeutic dose, will be a clinic then store. We can find it if you like. And you can click on any of those USA links right at the purple. Either one of those is fine. And then I use over 20 grams a day. Again, but here's the thing. The important thing is the extraction ratio, like how much turmeric is concentrated into that pill, right? So the finished product may only be 400 milligrams, but the amount of starting turmeric root that went into that 400 milligrams may be 5 or 10 grams, right? It depends on the extraction ratio. A good herb label will tell you how much herb they started with that went into the finished amount of herb in that capsule or tablet. Well, if that's not working, but try the second one. Not sure why it should be working. It usually does, but one of those 2 top purple links should work. And then I can just show you the product. But anyway,
that's okay.
So that's one thing. Then we have that's the crossover herb. It's culinary and medicinal. Another one, which I mentioned, is green tea. Another one, which is a very famous herb, is ginseng, Korean ginseng, Panax ginseng. Another study on ginseng found regular ginseng consumption, again, it's dose related like anything else, can reduce cancer risk by 50%, same as green tea. So that was pretty impressive. And then we have a very profound nutrient in, it's called a still bean, which is found in certain foods. Red wine, as an example, is resveratrol. The best source of that is Japanese knotweed root, which is an invasive weed, but has this very high concentration of naturally occurring resveratrol. And just to back up to turmeric for a minute, you could take a curcumin supplement, but I don't recommend it because that's one compound out of the whole plant. I really believe, as an herbalist, in using full spectrum formulas that retain the full phytochemical complexity and profile that nature made, and not extract single compounds and leave all the others out. And so I much prefer full spectrum herbal products, such as made by MediHerb in Australia. So that's just one example. There's other companies. So so the Japanese knotweed root as a source of resveratrol can be wonderful. It has neuroprotective benefits, cardiovascular and cardioprotective benefits, and definitely has cancer resistance benefits as well. Then the herb I'm writing a book about is Chinese wormwood. And I'll give your listener, I've written the first couple of chapters. I'd love to give that to your listeners as a gift. If they want to read the draft of the introduction, the first couple of chapters of this wonderful herb, this is certainly one of the most important herbs in the world for supporting cancer patients. Again, in the holistic paradigm, we're not treating cancer. That's the oncologist's job. But we are helping the person increase their own cancer resistance.
Right.
And it's very interesting and you've spoken about this extensively, of ivermectin and the benefits of that. Ivermectin shared the Nobel Prize in medicine in 2015 with Chinese wormwood.
Right.
And our mutual friend, William Marcus, the censored Canadian physician, we were speaking together at the same conference that you and I spoke at a few years back. Mm-hmm. And at the end of his talk, based on our having lunch together, he said, if you can't get ivermectin for any reason, take Chinese wormwood, which is Artemisia annua, which is also probably, I would say, in my opinion, the best single antiparasitic herb in the world, and is the best malaria treatment in the world, which is a red blood cell parasite. And this herb has a unique thing in it, not to get too technical, but it's called an endoperoxide bridge. And this thing, which is unique to this plant, the leaf, when the body breaks it down, it uses iron, a process called ferroptosis, to selectively kill cancer cells and parasites. And the literature on this herb is 50,000 studies on this herb. And it's remarkable in its ability to clear bad stuff. Let's just put it that way. Parasites, viruses. It was one of the COVID treatments that was suppressed to get the EUA on the COVID shots, just like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine were suppressed to get the EUA. So was Chinese wormwood. So was black cumin seed. So was Andrographis paniculata. All of these treatments, pharmaceutical and natural, were astoundingly effective at doing, the thing you advocated for, voice in the wilderness. Like, let's treat these patients and not wait till they're on death's door, right? Do early treatment. So Chinese wormwood, Artemisia annua, would be very important herb for cancer resistance. Typically, I recommend folks take it just for 4 to 7 days before taking a break for a week or two and then going back on. It's not a daily forever herb. So that's one that's very important. And black cumin seed, I wanted to give your listener, I created a course on this herb. One of the best herbs we have for increasing cancer resistance is black cumin seed. Also a great treatment for folks with metabolic syndrome and diabetes and hypertension. We have lots of good evidence on the use of black cumin seed for a lot of different things. So I made a little course on this herb that I'm happy to give your listeners as well. I'll give you the links. They can sign up for the show notes if they want. So black cumin seed, Chinese wormwood, turmeric, green tea, ginseng, resveratrol, ideally from Japanese knotweed root, and a Chinese herb called danshen, which is Salvia miltiorhiza, which is most famous. It's probably the single most important cardiovascular herb in the world. This is a spectacular herb. Also, 60,000 studies or papers on this herb. Just remarkable as a cardiovascular herb, but also cancer resistance. There's a range of compounds in the Salvia miltiorhiza that are very helpful at increasing the body's ability to resolve cancer itself.
Now,
those are some of my favorites.
Right. Let me ask you about just a few more.
Yeah.
How about ginger?
Yes, ginger, wonderful herb. That's kind of a world herb like turmeric and burdock that are found in many herbal traditions around the world. Garlic, licorice. The ginger does several things. One is it's a warming digestive tonic. So as in traditional herbalism, it's considered a stomachic herb, so it improves digestion. It treats like most digestive issues improve with ginger, unless it aggravates heartburn or reflux, which is unusual, but that would be the only thing because it's pungent, which is another word for spicy. And so some people don't do well with it, but at least 9 out of 10 do. So it's a stomachic digestive. It reduces inflammation. It's interesting. It's a warming herb that reduces inflammation, like turmeric, and also enhances microcirculation, which is a real big key to cancer resistance. I'm teaching a course right now on microcirculation called Let It Flow. Folks can join that if they want. And this is a big deal. So ginger, inflammation, circulation, and digestion, those are three of the main properties that make it a very attractive herb. And yeah.
Now, how about black pepper?
Black pepper is a nightshade, so I really don't recommend it as a routine herb therapeutically. I use a little pepper on my steak or whatever, my salad, as a culinary herb, but I don't recommend it a lot as a medicinal herb. The things that people use it for, we have better herbs for that.
Right. How about oregano?
Oh, oregano! Wow, yeah. So the oil of the oregano is profound with fungal infections, with certain viral infections. So it's not a daily forever herb, just like Chinese wormwood, but it can be used very usefully as for folks who want a natural solution to, say, a candida infection, along with, say, berberine and garlic. Berberine is another major herb with cancer resistance and metabolic syndrome in that area. It works at least as well. It went head to head with metformin and was at least as effective, if not better, and safer. So that's another herb I wanted to mention. But yeah, that one can be helpful too.
But some of these are kind of more anti-infective.
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah, you take it when you need it, but not preventatively.
How about milk thistle?
Oh boy, I could go for hours on that. That's one of my favorite herbs, and it's one of the most important herbs for the modern world. This is the milk thistle fruit or seed. This is a Western herb. It's not a Chinese herb, and we don't have this herb in Chinese medicine. And this herb has four functions, Peter. It protects the liver from, in technical terms, it stabilizes the hepatocyte membrane. I call it like plate mail armor, like in Game of Thrones, for the liver cells. It protects them from chemical damage. The second thing it does is it helps regenerate a damaged liver. Like if one of those three transaminases in the blood, the GGT, AST, ALT, if those are elevated, milk thistle is a key herb to help regenerate a damaged liver. I had a patient on aggressive chemotherapy for B-cell lymphoma, and he went into liver failure. He was given a couple of weeks to live. His enzymes were well over 1,000. The oncologist said at Sloan Kettering, he's like, I'm sorry, this happens sometimes. I gave him a pretty potent milk thistle concentrate, 70-to-1 concentrate. And he went back a week later. His liver enzymes were normal after a week. They went from over 1,000 to normal in a week, saved his liver, saved his life, because the transplant list was pretty long for him because he was not a young person. So milk thistle does that. And for the modern American metabolic syndrome, obese, diabetic person, it increases insulin resistance. It's probably the best herb for increasing insulin sensitivity and decreasing insulin resistance. So I use it all the time. I take it, again, a one a day. It's one of my one a days with black cumin seed and ashwagandha, for example, that I take and turmeric that I take every day, just preventatively. Low dose herbs can be very helpful taken preventatively. And that's one of them that I take. Also for our toxic environment, with all the environmental toxicity in the air and the chemtrails and the food and the water, all this stuff we're exposed to, which didn't exist 100 years ago, we got to protect our livers, and our cells from that. So milk thistle, key herb.
Wow. Michael, we're going to have to stop here. We could go on forever. This is absolutely terrific.
We'll do it again soon.
I have a write-up. If you have links like you have before, provide them. Yeah. I'll give them in the show notes. And then this will come out. But we've been talking to Dr. Michael Gaeta, the Gaeta Institute, make sure you visit his website, which is absolutely terrific. He's got a store. He's got all kinds of teaching materials. And for those of you who are healthcare providers, people who follow me, and a lot of you do, consider enrolling in one of his courses. He is a dynamic and, really can, I think, improve everyone's skill set out there, mine included. And it's absolutely been, phenomenal to have you for this really full hour of the McCullough Report. And again, I want to thank you so much for your time and your dedication really to the health of us all.
Thank you, Peter, and happy to help any of your patients who would like a consult. And we have a special page for your listeners, michaelgaeta.com/Peter. michaelgaeta.com/Peter. We have some special gifts and resources for your listeners.
Well, thanks so much. Again, thanks for being on the program.
Thanks, Peter.
Let's get real. Let's get loud. On America Out Loud Talk News, this is McCullough Report and Focal Point Substack. I'm Dr. Peter McCullough, your host. Thanks for watching.